Hey guys, Freeman here. So there's two things that I want to get down before we properly get into this video. One, I am fully aware I have not been uploading for shit over the past few months. Over the course of this time, I've been busy doing so many other things that I've simply not dedicated any time or energy to even think of the channel. The only place I've been present, if anywhere, has been Twitter, but that's about it. Something to note out about the video though is that it's fairly old, in the sense that this was recorded on the 1st of December last year, meaning that it's not going to contain the most crackling of new information. However, what is in here is a good discussion about where currently the fandom sits with things like paraphilia, with acceptance, where its current support structure is, and what it's currently actually standing for, and how it's, to a certain degree, biting them in the ass. So it's a good discussion, as well as some information about Sappho that you maybe haven't heard of before. But if you want the most cracking news about Sappho, click this annotation in order to get to the spot where we're starting to talk about not only Sappho, but also about where the channel is going to be heading over the course of this year. And with that being said, enjoy the video. Greetings, friends. Freeman here. Welcome back to another episode here at the channel. And of course, because I am Freeman, and we recently passed our lovely day, which was the 27th of November, which is Beta Furry Day, I decided in honor of that we're going to release a video about furries. Of course, because what else would you do? So yes, today we're talking about furries again, in Freeman versus Furries, and this time it's a very different beast we're tackling. As a matter of fact, we're tackling not just a person, but we're tackling something very different altogether. Because at this point in time, yeah, it's happened again. Another zoophile. And it feels fucking awful to have to say that, because the moment that you have to say, oh boy, another zoophile, that's when you know that it's pretty fucking bad. But don't worry, I have an expert on these disgusting fucks, which is for the benefit of us all and for the detriment of his sanity. The man, the myth, the legend, Coyote Lovely. Welcome to the channel.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on here.
It's a pleasure to have you. You're a furry, but it's fine. I've had multiple furries, so we'll just coalesce on the fact that it's the lesser of two evils.
Well, Freeman, people have affectionately referred to me as the furry that they would shove into the gas chamber last.
You know what? So. I consider myself part of that crowd. I might even spare you. Who knows?
Well, I appreciate it.
I might spare you, but
let's not get crazy.
Yeah. I don't want to get too crazy, but you know, we had the honorable ones as well within Germany at the time. But fucking hell, this is getting stupid already. Okay. I don't want to get a strike this early in, so let's fucking... Alright, memes aside. So, this is, for everyone who doesn't know, this is Coyote Lovely. He's a man that's been doing videos on furries for quite some time, and especially calling out people in question that has been doing some rather heinous shit. And I think the man, the myth, the legend himself can explain that a little bit better than I can. So please, do tell. Who are you? Why are you here?
Well, my name is Coyote Lovely. I make commentary videos typically exposing pedophiles, zoophiles, and necrophiles that exist within the furry fandom, whether they be on VRChat, Second Life, just Twitter, YouTube, DeviantArt, for Affinity, or anywhere in between. I would say Inkbunny, but that seems kind of redundant when you actually think about why it was made. But either way, what I typically make videos on is those three things. And for the most part, it's to help spread awareness that this is an issue, to make sure the information stays publicly accessible. And people at the end of the day can look at my videos. They can decide, I think what he said is 100% true, or they can think, I think what he said is 100% false. They can look at these and say, I think some of this is true, some of this is false. At the end of the day, it's meant to give you information and my perception of the information I presented to you along with it. And you're allowed to make of that whatever you will. But at the end of the day, I typically will not put out a video unless I firmly believe that the facts line up that this person is, in fact, one of these three things. So that's what I do, to be rather a little roundabout about it. So recently, though, I've covered Hypnotist Sappho, In the past, I've also covered Growly to a limited extent. I've also covered a actual full Discord server of necrophiles and zoophiles, which
God.
I didn't. That series actually didn't see its conclusion, and it's going to be picked up by a friend of mine who wanted to pick that one up because I decided I needed to start investing time to other projects, and I couldn't find the ability to finish that, like the time to finish that series. But the reason I was willing to actually just sort of drop that one is because it succeeded in what I wanted it to do. The server wound up shutting down. The person who created the server wound up deleting everything. Many of the people who were in the server are completely in the wind now. They've decided to delete everything as well. There was no actual legitimate criminal conduct, so it's not a matter of like getting law enforcement involved, so I don't consider that a loss. In fact, I consider this to be the best situation that could have happened regarding this server, considering most of what they did was harassment based, such as sending artwork of people's characters in usually I don't want to get into it too much. I don't know if your audience is, I don't know if your audience would be willing to hear about it. It was not something that many people would be happy about. That's where I should leave that one. Another subject that I've tackled in the past is, actually, I've done general commentaries on many zoophiles on Twitter. Like I typically, group commentary sort of things where like I'll take a couple of different people on Twitter who are zoophiles and sort of analyze certain things, usually with some kind of comedic twist. Like there was a couple of different videos about that. Usually you'll find those in the Quantum Chronicles. That as well was regarding a person named... speaking of the Quantum Chronicles, I'm sorry, this is kind of a little rambly. I didn't prepare anything beforehand. You should just imagine exactly how much I've had to look at and report to the police. Like, and this is something that I always stress to people. Always take these things to the cops if you have the ability. If you think there's legitimate evidence of a crime and you have the ability to alert the authorities in that person's area, do so. Don't take it to me. Don't take it to any other you. Take it to the police quietly. I always do that before anything ever comes out on my channel if I have the ability to do so, and if there is anything that indicates a crime occurred, I will take it to the police with no less than 2 weeks before I hit upload. Like just to make sure they have time to document or send that to wherever it needs to go. Even if I don't hear back from them, it still gives them ample time to act on it if possible.
Yeah, that's fair. Though, like, so you would consider yourself basically like some furry vigilante?
That would not be inaccurate. It would definitely not be inaccurate. Right. Actually, I'm more a fan of what Kiwifarms had to call me, which is the Zoophile's autistic boogeyman.
I do like that description. Yes, the Zoophile's autistic boogeyman sounds very accurate.
Yeah, I'm not usually one for a lot of stuff that goes on Kiwifarms. I'll read it and I'll use it as a source for information. But that comment about me did genuinely make me laugh. I'd see a lot of comments about me on Kiwifarms, and usually they get a good laugh out of me, whether they're positive or negative.
Yeah, I'd say like when it comes to furry, when it comes to zoophiles in general, it's like a really strange thing about them for some reason is like when they eventually out themselves, because for some reason they're very proud about doing that. When they out themselves as being the zoophiles, they have a tendency to, for some reason, how do I say? They always go 200%. It's never a case of just like keeping something to themselves. It's always a case of like, fuck it, I'm going to go full retard, basically. Just go straight in. I'm gonna become an advocate. I'm gonna mark myself with a pride symbol for this shit. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? It's like,
yeah, it's truly bizarre. I've noticed that as well, and for the life of me, I would love to give you an answer as to why that is. But I don't have one. I've never gotten a sufficient answer to why they can't just like, to why they have to like always tell everybody. And I guess it just makes my job easier, so I'm not complaining. But at the same time, it's one of those things where I don't understand the thought process. But then again, I guess if I understood it, I would have to be one of them. So maybe I'm better off not.
I mean, hey, knowledge like that can lead to very dangerous places, I'd imagine. So. The thing is then that, of course, we have these disgusting fucks in plenty when it comes to the furry fandom. I say we, but that's more along the line of you. I'm not a part of that. And when it comes to one of those individuals that has become very much so prominent, is someone that I think a lot of people already know of, which is the reason why you're probably called Boogeyman, and that is Sappho.
Oh, yes. Hypnotist Sappho. Hi, Valerie, in case you're watching this. Because I guarantee you, if you put her in the title, she will absolutely.
Oh, not only that, but I also you blew your own chance. I mean, hey, you can still come on. I did send you a message on Twitter, so you've got an invitation. You're welcome to come on as well, of course, for obvious reasons.
Oh, I also want to mention, just in case Valerie is watching, I hope you liked the way Cecil read out your messages. She genuinely thinks you're a terrible human being, and so does Shiokami as well. I hope you enjoyed the voice actress's performance. Anyway.
So, yeah, basically, yeah, no. Sappho is the person in question that is a little bit of the topic of today's video, but it's not the primary topic. It's one of several. Because this is going to be a little bit, how do I say? It's basically going to be a little bit of a video where we're going to go over a lot of things. Not only are we going to talk about who Sappho is and what they do, we're going to talk about Zoophilia and the fandom, their place in it, and if it really does have a place, because at this point in time, we'll get to it. And then arguments against Zoophilia in general and in the fandom. And then a last topic, which we'll be getting to as well. But that will be then. So we'll start off with who Sappho is. For those who are uninformed, the way I can describe it at least, they are basically a furry YouTuber who did a lot of hypnotism ASMR beforehand.
Somewhat. What I could easily describe this as, if I'm gonna just make it as clear as possible, she did VR chat group hypnosis sessions, and she recorded them and uploaded them for people to watch on her YouTube channel. That's what she did, and that's kind of where her channel was mostly centered, it seemed, until out of left field on September 11th, she made this video saying coming out about things. Again, at the title of which is very disingenuous, and the reason why is because she also starts out by stating like all these things about, like, you know, Stonewall, gay rights, things like that, and then right out of left field, 3 minutes in, boom, she's talking about, and it left me sitting there just like, what? Like, what? I was watching this like expecting she was going to say like something normal, like that she's coming out as trans or something, and I'm like, I can support this, but something it's like now everything's just been recontextualized with me just being like, I want to punch this creature, this fucking mutant, right through its goddamn teeth. Like, that is not okay. But after that, the whole world came down around her head, and everyone in the commentary community just came, not just me, like a lot of people started fucking coming right at her. I think it got to the point that there were some reaction commentators like over 1 million subscribers talking about her. I think one of them was like it wasn't Cyrus, it was one of those guys though that hangs out in that group of like
right, okay, I don't know which specifically, but as a general rule of thumb, sorry. It's just a lot of people have been bringing this person up, and it seems that this is the strange thing, because at this point in time, there's been so many people that hasn't been bringing up Sappho, but has been bringing up, like, it's almost like a tradition at this point in time. I'm sorry to say, it sounds fucking awful, but it sounds like every single time the furry fandom is suffering under the yoke of some form of degenerate that just like paints them all with the same white brush. And to a sad degree, deservedly so, because of the things that they don't do to better their shit. Like, Jesus Christ, the furry fandom is the most cringeworthy thing I've ever heard of. But the thing is, though, that they also do come together by the sound of it. Like, they actually do come together to try and out these people from fucking everything.
Well, there's two sides to that. And I can explain both sides a little bit. And again, this is just me trying to be completely down the middle about both of these sides of things. I'm not saying either one is right. One of them, in my opinion, is very clearly right, clearly because of what I do. But this is just me, like, kind of, letting you know about that. there is a side of it where it's just like, yeah, it's always in the furry fandom, and it always seems that way because the fandom predominantly puts out this sense of like they're accepting of everybody. We'll take everybody kind of thing. But the problem with that is that when you take everybody,
you get everybody.
You get some people. Yeah, and you get a lot of baggage, especially when it comes to a fandom that is, around anthropomorphic animals. You're gonna start attracting the wrong crowd. So that's a real problem. And I think the fact of the matter is the furry fandom needs to do a little bit, at some level, in my opinion, of gatekeeping. And when I say gatekeeping, I don't mean in the buzzword sense. I mean literally like making sure that is a way to make sure people are into like that.
Now we're jumping a little bit ahead. Now that's fine.
Sorry.
But yeah.
But let me get back to the main point. Sorry about that. But it's one of those things that a lot of people, when these sort of situations do come up, because they do, we see them come up. They just fucking do. We're gonna admit that one right now. There's a lot of people who will actively sort of try to shut down the conversation simply because either A, they don't want to hear about it, B, drama bad, no drama, drama, you bad because drama, or C, both A and B. And that's a problem. That's a real problem, because when people have that mentality, it allows problems like that to continue persisting and spreading. And it's like thinking about it as though like you just got like a really deep gash on your leg and choosing to ignore it. It's like you try to walk around, but it keeps bleeding. It's starting to fester. Eventually you're going to fall over and you're not going to be able to get back up. You're going to die. You need help. You need to fix that.
Yeah, it's like the thing is like, as far as I've understood it, right? When it comes to the furry fandom, they seem to have been a little bit of the rejects of the reject, in the sense that back in the day when it used to be like unpopular and nerdy and shit like that to be playing Dungeons and Dragons, that has been brought mainstream now. Like, people still did that because they were rejected from the football team. The furries were essentially the people that were even rejected from like the football team and the Star Wars convention, and then turned themselves into their own thing because they were the rejects of rejects. So at that point in time, what are you going to do? Are you going to gatekeep, or are you going to open it for everybody because you're so small and niche anyway? Initially maybe it was good that they had it open, but at this point in time, it's become one of those things where it's become mainstream, yes, but it's become mainstream in a sense that has brought a lot of shit upon the fandom. And it's like, I'm not a part of the fandom. I dislike the fandom. I don't dislike individual furries necessarily. I mean, fucking Coyote here is pretty good, and I've known him for quite a while, actually. But the fandom in and of itself is my problem, because of the fact that some individuals can definitely be of a problem. But the fandom at large is my big gripe, because it seems to be this cohesive mess that claims to be community, but it's also extremely splintered at the same time, in a way that doesn't really center around anything really concrete instead of the concept, because all they have is the concept of anthropomorphism. But from there, they have like taken it into a really strange place. And this is one of the reasons people don't like to be associated, as far as I understand it, with furries. Like, they can like anthropomorphism, but they will kill you if you call them a furry. And to a certain degree, I understand that. But what I would say in this regard is that it seems as if, though, there is a lot of problems with the fandom that they don't want to deal with, to the point where it becomes so integral that it's difficult to really tell, is this supposed to be a part of it or not? Because you have a sizable portion that screams, fuck no, we don't. But then there's groups anyway that still establishes and becomes a thing. You have Zooier Than Thou, that is an established zoophile podcast. There is now the Sappho's own organization, non-profit. What was it called?
I really don't know.
I'll put it on the screen, the name, because it's basically terrible. I haven't looked anything up about this because, let's just say, I felt disgusted enough as is to look up stuff for the video, so I wasn't really like, ugh.
In my opinion, I saw the like part of their video, and then I thought to myself, this is a bad joke, and like, it's not even a fucking funny. Like, she's gonna fall so flat on her face. It's like, it's a stupid, it's a dream. It's stupid. It's a pipe dream she's got, and there's no way this goes anywhere. And even if she manages to get this organization off the ground, good fucking luck. She has to dox herself in order to be a chairman of a nonprofit. Not only that, she's not going to make a living doing this, and it's not going to gain any fucking momentum because nobody's going to accept that as a sexuality. Nobody thinks fucking dogs is a real sexuality. It's not. You're crazy. See a doctor.
I think the thing is that becomes really fucking interesting as well when it comes to this. This is something I actually want to ask you because I don't know much about American law. But, of course, advocating for things that are illegal to become legal isn't illegal in and of itself, like, you know, protesting or advocating for abolishment of certain laws. But when it comes to advocating for things like this type of paraphilia, like we're talking, you know, bestiality, is it illegal to have organizations based around bestiality that is essentially trying to signal boost it?
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give any legal advice. Yeah, but
it's because it sounds really bizarre. It feels almost like it feels like having a There's going to be a really out there comparison, but you're going to understand what I mean. Basically, organized and put together Al-Qaeda support group that is non-profit that endorses the fucking terrible things that they do, and you know, stand for that shit. But oh no, we're peaceful. Basically, it's like, I don't know how to put it.
The way, no, I think I understand what you're saying. To the best of my awareness, it would be legal for them to make an organization that advocates for this and it's peaceful. I think it's stupid and it's pointless because it's never going to gain traction, never going to gain ground, and nobody's going to change their mind on this subject. Not anybody who's not terminally online anyway. So I mean, it's a pointless endeavor, and ultimately it's going to cause her nothing but harm to herself, which I think is fucking hilarious. But at the same time,
this is a train wreck waiting to happen. So, yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm going like, this is objectively, not subjectively, objectively the dumbest fucking idea I've ever seen a human being have, and I'm just gonna watch it happen and unfold in front of me. Because even if I tell you, Valerie, even if I tell you this will blow up in your face like a fucking nuclear bomb, I'm talking scorched fucking earth blow up in your face, you're not gonna listen to me. Because why would you? I've made the series that I have on you that's been wildly successful, by the way. And I'm just going to laugh as this happens because I'm going to be pointing from the fucking safe distance going, I fucking knew it. Now fucking die in a nuclear winter, bitch.
I mean, oh God, the way you said that sounded very flamboyant. Die in a nuclear winter, bitch. It's like fucking hell. Yeah. But...
A war never changes.
Oh my. Anyway, hey, sexy Batman. Now, jokes aside, that's a reference. So, jokes aside, fucking hell, for someone that supposedly is very like done with the drama, you seem to be able to drop a lot of bombs.
Well, I'm done reporting on it on my channel, but people keep fucking DMing me shit anyway. It's one of these things where it's like I still have a lot of thoughts about it, and I'm still keeping tabs on it. I'm 95% sure I'm done with it. Like, barring some. Like I said, barring some act of God where there's a huge breakthrough in this story and I'm given some evidence of some damning shit, I'll get back into it if that happens. But if that does not happen, I'm not.
Do you want to know what would be the funniest thing ever? If Kiro the Wolf becomes the George Soros of the furry fandom and he just funds zoophilic shit all around. like this fucking non-profit organization is like, I like what it is that you do. I'm gonna give you some money so you can get off the ground, but don't say it to anybody. It's like Kara the Wolf was behind this all along. I don't think that's the case, but it would be fucking jeez, that would be funny as fuck.
I mean, it's been a weird year.
Oh yeah,
dude. It's been a weird. Kara comes back, fucking this bitch is doing all this shit. Like coming out as a Zoophile on 9/11. Like who does that?
I don't fucking know. That's a way to fucking take a steaming shit on that sort of event and also masturbating over it whilst you do it. Fucking hell. But yeah, it's so fucking bad because I don't understand it. It's like, yeah, people are pushing back against it, but it's like, it's this strange thing. They take 5 inches, they're pushed back 4 inches. Then they take 5 more inches, they push back 4 more inches. So they always gain a little, it feels like. And that is what we're going to go with next, because now we're going to talk about zoophilia in the fandom. Zoophilia, or by its true and common name, bestiality in the fandom, because that's what it is. Don't fucking sugarcoat it.
Actually, hold on. Bestiality is the action. Zoophilia is the name of the paraphilia. So actually, both are correct. What they're trying to dress it up as is zoosexual, which is not. That's a stupid made-up word that doesn't exist.
It comes across to me the same way that it comes across with me when people are saying that they are maps instead of pedophiles.
Oh yeah, no, they're absolutely. It's the same. Like it's literally the same thing. Like they'll be like, oh, we're not actually pedophiles. We're minor attracted persons. It's like, no, you're called a pedophile. You're called a chomo, actually, and you get fucking shanked.
And there's a reason why they don't survive there. Anyway, so yeah, next topic is going to be zoophilia in the fandom. And I don't care anymore if this video gets fucking age restricted or shit like that.
Welcome to my life. Every single thing that I upload gets age restricted. I don't know why.
I wonder.
I feel like they're out to get me.
But yeah, one thing though is that I'm really fucking curious about when it comes to this whole ordeal is the zoophilia in the fandom. Because like I said, zoophilia gets some strange fucking traction into the fandom for some reason. Like I said, they take 5 inches, they get pushed back 4. Then they take 5 more inches, get pushed back 4. And what I mean when I say this, take for example, the push for zoophilia to be a thing in the fandom. There's a lot of people against zoophilia, they push back against zoophilia, and they get pushed back. But they have 1 inch still in there, either in the fact that they are connected to people in the upper echelons of the fucking organization, that they are part of organizing events altogether, or maybe an entirely new style of art is getting introduced called feral. Like, it feels like it's just infectious. It's impossible to get rid of. You can cure the symptoms, but the disease is you can prevent the symptoms to go further, but it's always going to be there lingering, and eventually it's going to get you with age. It's like it feels impossible to escape from. So what's your deduction on like zoophilia in the fandom? How far has it actually reached at this point?
Well, with the recent situation with Tao Foxy, those logs being dropped, considering Tao Foxy was a very influential member of the furry community in, Colorado, specifically around Denver, he ran an event that was, I think, bi-monthly, as well as con staff at Denver, were being involved, and both of them, like con staff, like one member and him, and then 2 other people, they were in this like zoophile ring that was exposed very recently, I think this year. In Colorado, so that's very alarming. There's the fact that, I think all that you've probably heard about all the shit with Dragoneer. I don't have that all off the top of my head, but apparently there's a lot of really terrible shit involving him. And he's the guy who fucking owns Freeman.
Yeah.
There's the fact that Inkbunny.
I've heard some shit around these.
There's the fact that Inkbunny itself is a thing that people will actively use, when Inkbunny was literally created because Fur Affinity would stop letting people post cub artwork. Inkbunny said, you can do that all you want to here. That was their selling point. They bragged about that. It's one of those things that I still like the furry fandom. I still very much enjoy a lot of the creative things people create there, people make there, they post there, whatever. I liked a lot of the people who are in it, but it's getting harder and harder for me to look at it and think, this can be saved.
Yeah,
it's getting harder to think that.
I don't think it will to a certain degree. I think it's going to be there. It's going to stay. But that's me. I can go into that a little bit more after you're finished.
And I think you might be right. I think there's a good to fair chance that you are right. But I keep looking at this and I'm like, I love this fandom. I've met so many great people here, and I understand that it very well could be a sinking ship. I could be trying to bail water out of a ship that has too many holes, and I might not. Maybe there's just not enough people doing it. I don't know. But I want to believe that it is a problem that can be solved, and that's why I'm choosing to still be a part of the fandom and trying to actually fucking expose this shit when I can, like where I can. It's. I want to believe that it can be saved more than anything. I don't know if it's just me wanting that or if it is possible at this point, but I'm willing to admit that maybe I just want to believe it's possible.
The way I see it is I'm semi-apathetic about it, in the sense that this is not my fandom. I don't actually partake in the fandom. There's nothing in the fandom for me because of the age demographic, the people that are involved with it, and generally speaking, the style of art. It's not something for me, but it's something that I understand that, you know, a lot of people likes, and that's fair enough in and of itself. If you can enjoy it, enjoy it. What becomes a bit of a problem now is how it has reached into everything else, because furry culture, or the furry way of looking at it, and even like furry lingo and shit like that, has gotten into so many things. Like, people are trying to insert how people are trying to self-insert themselves into shit. They will also insert their sonas into shit because that's them, and it becomes very synonymous with just cancer in general. So it becomes very so the way I see it is that the fandom in and of itself is nothing for me at all, and I want to keep myself away from that. As a matter of fact, I don't want anyone to try and recruit me to it, because the only thing I'll do is probably say how cringe you all are. What I will say, though, is that I want you to enjoy it. I want you to be able to take pleasure in it if you can, to the extent that others can be safe doing it, because there are some things there that really does bother me, and it's specifically with the furry fandom, because it is deceptive. In terms of its appearance and in terms of its delivery, it is extremely deceptive, the way I see it. Because it prides itself on being this inclusive group that is for everyone, that is open, that it's available for every age, every ethnicity, gender, and sexuality. And that's great. Until you realize that there's so many fucking terrifying and terrible things just below the surface that takes the guise of these cute animal monster things that are lurking about. And that's when it becomes really weird, because you don't know who's beneath that suit. You might see a very colorful Sona that looks ever so bright and nice and tidy, but the person behind it is the most terrible piece of shit the world has ever seen, and will eventually use that Sona as their flag to wave for something really fucking awful or terrible or otherwise disgusting. And it becomes impossible for me to try and like separate the two to a certain degree, because it looks far nicer than it actually is in that sense. Not for me, but I understand that for a lot of people it does. So it's trying to present itself as this one thing, when what you get delivered on your plate sometimes is completely different. And I understand there's people that are trying to clean it up, but because of how the fandom seems to be structured and what seems to be going along with the fandom and in the fandom, it's just, I don't know. It seems like a inevitability that it's going to have a major crash.
Well, I mean, to me, listening to what you said, I think you brought up a lot of really great points. I don't fully agree with some of them. Others, I have are sentiments that I've heard echoed by others as well. For example, the point that you made about you don't know who's behind that, that animal costume, that's correct. And one of the reasons why I'm fully saying you have no idea who that is because one of the most deranged people in the fandom literally made the same sentiment. Foxler, don't know if you've heard of him. He's the person who was in charge of the furry raiders. He still is now. The furry raiders are effectively neo-Nazis that exist inside of the furry fandom that people really don't like, and they've been banned from almost every single convention and every single furry website. They're not liked. Like, they're not trolls. People consider them, like, they try to, like, sort of be like, oh, well, we're not Nazis even if we wear these uniforms. Like, what do you mean this red armband? Like, that's a paw. It's not a swastika. You're obviously stupid, kind of thing. And they'll use a lot of, like, really dumb skeptic logic. Like fucking Sargon of Akkad style shit. It's fucking stupid.
Sargon of Applebee's. Good times.
Yeah, they own suits. We don't
what
own
people
any
what
suits.
people
So,
what
anyway,
the raiders don't understand is that fur burns a lot better than skin, and there's one piece of hardware. There's something that's going into the furnace far more frequently, I think. It's something that's gonna go into the furnace far more frequently than that of the skin hairless variety.
Also, Foxler, just to point out, Foxler is somebody who has actively, faced criminal charges for potential child, like having sex with children, pedophilia kind of thing, child sexual abuse. and he has actually crossed state lines to have sex with a 16-year-old so that it would be legal. And he has gone on record. He can be quoted saying that it was the best sex he's ever had.
And now I don't want to talk about that anymore because please, I'm going to have to fucking silence that shit.
That was just for context. I'm going away from that now. It's just to let you know this is the same person who said that dressing up as an animal is a great way to get close to whoever you want, even kids. He can be quoted as saying that too.
Good. Now we know that he's next one in the firing line. So,
right. So it's one of those things that I fully agree with your sentiment of. It's dangerous sometimes.
So
the level of access that somebody with a fursuit could get to people who are vulnerable.
So then comes the question: the Zoophilia in the fandom, as it stands right now, is it? Do you think that the organization eventually is going to cave in and just like allow them to be a thing, but try to get them to be as far away as possible, or are they still going to shun them, or are they even going to openly be like, "Yes, we're accepting of this"?
Which organization?
Furry fandom as a whole, like the furry organizations, I suppose you can say, be it Pittsburgh, be it wherever, really.
And how they're going to react to Zoophilia?
Okay, I'll restate the question. Do you?
I'm sorry. I'm not understanding.
No, it's okay.
Sorry.
Do you think so with Zoophilia in the fandom? Do you think that in the future, or something along the line in the future, that the current furry organizations are going to either bend a little bit and give them some space and recognition? Are they going to continue to shun them, or are they going to give them the representation that they themselves want? What is going to happen, do you think?
I think if they just allowed all of them in just scot-free, at least half the fandom would fucking riot. There's no fucking way around that one. There's so many people in the fandom who are outspokenly against Zoophilia, and rightly so, that there is no way conventions, like if a convention said we're allowing zoophiles, like openly to like knowing, like they would take known zoophiles and they were just like, oh yeah, we're letting them, we don't give a fuck. That convention would that convention would be closed next year and the year after because nobody would be attending. People would be demanding refunds.
Yeah.
Like they would go bankrupt in a hurry. But as far as the questions, like, if they would give any ground, like, honestly, conventions are specifically, I'm going to talk about conventions here. It seems that conventions, when they know there is a predator that is going to attend, they will not permit them to attend. And that's a good thing. I'm very happy for that. I've been very skeptical of conventions in the past, and even parts of this year I've been skeptical of them because I've tried to like tell them about certain predators and gotten no response. I don't know if that's just because they don't like me. Maybe they don't. I'm not very popular. But it's one of those things where it seems to me when they're aware of something, when they get enough like actual push from a lot of people, it's like, hey, you need to pay attention to this. They will pay attention. They'll make a decisive decision to actually like not let them in. So I think that's good. I don't think they're ever going to just be like, okay, well, we're going to let zoophiles in. Fuck it. One, it's going to affect their bottom line, which is important to every, company. And two, which on some level, just back to one, on some level, every convention is kind of a company. Like,
well, yeah, of course. They're fucking...
And two, it's also not just going to reflect on the convention, it's going to reflect on convention staff and everybody who's involved in the convention. And even if they managed to actually fund the convention at that point, and I'm not saying they could, number three comes into play, which is that people are going to start notifying the actual venue that, hey, they're going to be having people who have sex with animals and kids in your venue, and they know that too. Are you sure you want to let them be there? And usually that gets venues shut down in a hurry.
The venue entirely, or the people gone?
No, like the places that they're going
to sorry. If the people... Okay, I understand. Yeah, I mean... fucking Rainforest, most popular one, I guess. But that was the fault of the attendees more so than it was the fault of the holders. But it was still a thing of like, people began to reach out to like have it shut down everywhere.
Yeah, and that's actually another thing that happened recently with Free for All, which was a very controversial convention that was announced this year. And it was one of those things where, if people are really mad enough, not only will they not sell tickets, people will contact the venue saying, you need to stop this. Like, this is not acceptable. We think you have a right to know what they're planning, what they do, what they believe, what they advocate. And that typically is enough to get a venue to say, no, fuck you. You're not, no, go away. This is bad PR that we don't want. You're not allowed at our Marriott, you know?
Right, okay. So what happened at the free-for-all thingy?
Literally that. They called the Marriott. They were going to be, the Marriott.
Oh, well, yeah, but wait. Do you mean that there was are you referring to the Marriott when...
Oh, that's...
Do you mean when Rainforest?
The free-for-all thing was... No, I'm talking about free-for-all this year. The free-for-all thing, they're not related to Zoophilia in the slightest. It's just an example of that people were contacting the venue.
Okay. I don't know what the whole free-for-all thing is, but it's a furry-related event, right?
It was a convention, like I said, that was going to start this year and be a yearly
right,
thing.
Okay.
It was... And it was... A lot of people were... There was a controversy around it. It had nothing to do with pedophilia or zoophilia, so it's not really all that relevant, except that it brings up the example, you know, to help illustrate number 3, which is that people will start contacting the venue.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. So, but yeah, that's indeed like something. So going back to the original argument in that case, like the whole thing about zoophilia in the fandom and its current place. As to what I believe, I am unsure. The thing is that the fandom itself has a lot of problem with this, and this is something that we eventually can get to, but something I'd actually like to bring up, which is a bit of an interesting thing, there has been some interesting things being looked at, because I wanted to look some shit up in preparation for this video. And one of the things that I wanted to look up was the rate of, like, well, because I've received some comments on my videos saying that zoophilia in the fandom is about on par with zoophilia in like modern society, and I don't believe that in the slightest. And there's actual sources for this, because there's even saying like it ranges the reported prevalence rates from 8.3 to 4.9% for men, 3.6 to 1.9% for women. And that's in a normal population.
Unfortunately, and this I say unfortunately because I don't like to say this because I don't want this to be what I believe to be the case. I have no figures to back it up, but I believe this is what I'm being honest here. I believe that there are a disproportionately high number of zoophiles in the furry community as opposed to in general society. And it bothers me. I don't like that I'm saying that. Those words taste like fucking vinegar leaving my mouth. I hate it. But I think it's true. It's one of the reasons why I do what I do. I try to lower that number, but at the same time, I think it would be lying if I said there are the same number of zoophiles in proportion to in the furry fandom as there are in humanity. I think it's just
I agree.
Well, based upon what you just presented with saying probably closer to 10, we're going to average out 10% for all of humanity kind of thing, since that you put it there. If that's all right.
Sure. It's just, if I might not know how percentages work in this case, but let's put it at 10 for the sake of it.
Right. So what I'm going to, and I get that we only have the one study, which sucks. I wish there was a way we could get more accurate figures because, but the one study saying it's about 18.9% was what the figure you gave, I believe.
18.5, 18.6 roughly.
I think that is not entirely accurate, but it is more closer to accurate than I'm comfortable with. I think if we're being completely honest, because this was conducted over the internet where there are possibly people who could skew results, I would say the results, like the genuine results, may be lower, but not by a lot. I would say they'd be probably closer to 16%. Would be a close answer for like legitimate, like this were people who were legitimate.
I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I'll be honest with you. I think it's up in there. Those percentages, we're talking like 18%. I'm almost willing to believe that. And the reason why is because at this point in time, it's like you get a new zoophile coming out every single fucking half hour, it feels like. They get exposed, or they expose themselves and try to legitimize it, which is something else that is also really fucking frightening when people in this position are trying to, instead of getting help or trying to, seek some sort of assistance for their problems. They instead try to legitimize it, moralize it, and even build it up to become.
Hold on a moment. We're talking, and this is just to readdress the point you brought up first, which is that they're coming out every half an hour. I agree. There are many other zoophiles that are being exposed or coming out very frequently, but also let's also bear in mind that this is a problem that has persisted for a very long time, but only around the time that Caro was first exposed was when people started looking to find out if there were more people like this. I mean, some people like got exposed very rarely before that, but this is something that's been decades of buildup and has only really had people, coming out or being exposed in the past, like within the past 5 years with any regularity. So it's one of those things that I agree that it may seem like a far more disproportionately high number, and I agree the number is still disproportionately high and it needs to be lowered, but it's also something that you need to bear in mind that it's been at least 2 decades of buildup since, because the furry community existed, what I think the 80s and 90s was when it first started finding its footing, and it was built on a lot of sexual themes. So I think it's being slightly uncharitable to not take into account how long the communities existed, as well as how short of a time people have started actively trying to expose these people, or how active and outspoken they've been. Like, that's only been a recent development.
That's fair. I can submit to that. Especially because it sounds like they're coming out of the woodwork every 15 minutes, but I think also because of the fact that they're being exposed for what they are, it sounds like also they're somewhat trying to group up for the purposes of making a push in order to get this legitimized in some cases, which is also a little bit like, it's mostly laughable, but it also becomes a little bit of a concern at the back of the head. Is like, how many people are actually going to be for this? I'm going to laugh at them until the fucking sun goes dark, but still, it's still in the back of my mind, like, how many people actually fucking want this? And yeah, that'd be frightening. So,
well, when you bring that up, it does remind me a little bit of what Sappho said at the start of her video when she said coming out about things. She wanted to take the oomph out of people who were going to make a Sappho exposed video, so she was coming to expose herself, kind of thing. And it's one of those things that I agree with the way that you put that. I actually very much agree with that. I think a lot of them are choosing to expose themselves so that they can't be exposed. And then they're trying to look to others who are doing the same thing in solidarity because they think strength in numbers. I think that's ultimately why a lot of them are crawling out of the woodwork of their own volition instead of waiting to be exposed themselves. They're thinking strength in numbers. If we stand together, they can't possibly stop us all. It's literally like that we're gonna run to Area 51. They can't shoot us all meme. It's like that. Like they're gonna Naruto run past all the bullets and people who don't want them there. No, it's not how it's gonna work. It's hilarious that they think it works that way. It's not going to work that way, but that's why I think a lot of them will willingly expose themselves. They want to, they think that solidarity, that strength in numbers mentality will force people to accept them. But people don't have to accept people who do things like that to animals or children or corpses or anything like that, because that is vile and you should be seeking mental help. You shouldn't be trying to advocate for its normalcy and making people try to allow it. You should be getting mental help from a professional who can give you long-term ongoing therapy so that you can manage these symptoms for the remainder of your life and be as successful and safe as possible.
And with that, I do think we put the lid on that for the moment, and we go on to the next topic, which we've kind of touched on already, but I think we should now go into it properly, and that is the arguments against zoophilia, both in general and in the fandom. Because I think in this case that the fandom have a fair bit more that they have to focus on compared to general, just because of the amount in comparison. So if you compare like so if you have general society, we already know why we can say that it's bad. I mean, for one, it's illegal. For two, we say it's immoral, and we usually leave it at that. The fandom, however, has to have more, well, essentially trying to better, it sounds really weird, but they have to bring more arguments, because this is something I think people, as a general rule of thumb, don't expect to argue against. It becomes a very strange scenario that we would never find ourselves, as a species, in a situation where we would have to argue against fucking animals. Like it's a strange thing. So I think we should focus now on this segment on talking about what can be said against these people. What can be the arguments besides it being illegal and immoral?
Well, I guess the best place to start with that for any kind of counter arguments would be to at least discuss the arguments they present in favor of it. So that way you can understand why there's certain arguments that are generally more effective than others. For example, one of the arguments they'll typically give is that that consent is either something that an animal can display non-verbally, or it's not necessary whatsoever in that context. And that's if you argue that animals can't consent. Which is a valid argument. They can't. They can't consent to sex with a human being. They simply can't. So if you present that argument, that's typically one of the first arguments you're going to get back, which is that they consent in other ways, or they don't need to be able to consent because it doesn't blah blah blah. Like, you know, it's like, and they'll bring up arguments of like, oh well, since they can't consent verbally, does that mean somebody who can't speak can't consent anymore? What does that mean? And what are you saying there? Kind of thing. So that's usually where that conversation tends to go. The smart decision, in my opinion, against that argument is to not engage with it at all, because it's stupid. There's no reason to engage with an argument like that. But if you're going to engage with it, there are counter arguments you can give. For example, one of them is that even taking out of the factor that it doesn't matter if it's verbal, nonverbal, whatsoever, that's irrelevant. We're taking that out of the conversation. Even if you decide to take that out of the conversation, you can just tell them, okay, there's a significant power imbalance between a human being and an animal, because those are things that we have bred like over the course of fucking centuries to be companions and to be almost dependent upon us. It's what domestication really is.
We are dominant. That's the whole thing. That's why you typically, for example, in a family, when you have a family dog, they are subservient to you. They do what you tell them and teach them. They are basically in a sense, you've bred them up to be essentially a golden cage slave, for the purposes of like, I mean, sure. Do you think it would be a lot happier in the condition that it is in? Of course. And maybe I'm even going on a very wording it in a very bad way. That's not impossible. But
what I just wanted to get to the point that I was driving at, which is that it effectively, the implication that they're, you know, getting a dog and then raising it for this purpose, it gives two implications. One, they're a groomer. They're grooming this thing to have sex with, like from being a child in and of itself. Because like it was a puppy at one point, and then it grows up. That makes them a predator just off of the nature of grooming and how that works. As well as the fact that there's a massive power imbalance going on there, which means even if you adopted a full-grown animal, and again, I'm only humoring this argument that they're putting just so I can give the counter argument. Even if you adopted a full-grown animal, the power imbalance is so wide there simply because you control its entire living situation and whether or not it can even eat or survive, or if it even gets to live, because you could have it put down. It's one of those things that the power imbalance is so wide that if you analyze it the same way as you did between somebody who is in corrections and a prisoner, it would be a crime if a corrections officer had sex with a prisoner, because the corrections officer has all of the power, all of the authority, and they can make the prisoner do whatever they want and ruin their fucking existence if they say no. Essentially, it creates a situation where any kind of sexual, you know, interaction by default becomes rape because of that power imbalance.
And to bring it to a more human thing as well, you can think of it this way as well. There are disorders in humanity that essentially makes it so that even though you're an adult, you'll have the mind of, for example, a 10 or a 12-year-old, making you incapable of making choices or things along the line that would... with full understanding what it is that you do, because of the fact that you've essentially stunted development. So even though by just physical aging you might be 48 and you still have the mind of a 12-year-old, those that are 16-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 17-year-olds, they would be more mature than you technically. So they would be above you in that sense because they have far more of an awareness in that case of their surroundings and their situation. Now, this is a thing that varies from individual to individual depending on the disorder in question. But as a general rule of thumb, if it comes to the conclusion that they're told to be, a 48-year-old man with the mind of an 11-year-old due to a disability, then someone that is 17 doesn't have any disabilities would be considered above them, because typically their age their physical age also transcribes onto their mental age, I should say. So that you could also say is a power imbalance. If someone was, let's say you have someone that's an 18-year-old, they could abuse someone that's a 48-year-old that has the mental capacity of a 12-year-old. Like, that's something that definitely can happen.
No, that is actually a very strong argument, but the problem is they always come back with the counter argument of, oh, there's nothing to suggest that animals can't understand higher concepts, things like that. They just try to dismiss that point as if you didn't.
They are.
Say it.
There are. There are.
No, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I just want to clarify. I agree with you, but the problem is that zoophiles will wave that off as though it's not a real point, even though it's entirely valid in their studies that substantiate it. So at that point, my suggestion is to take it to the position of, okay, well, we can be very sure that animals can't understand every single thing a human can.
Of course.
At the level
that's because typically when we see them, they're like, it's instinct versus like actual mental understanding.
Right. So usually my suggestion is take it to the equation of even, let's say that even if they had the mental capacity of a full-grown adult, because they don't have the ability to understand things to the same level as a coherent, very aware, fully grown adult, like they can't understand what taxes are. They don't understand how the car works. They don't understand that the doorbell's not evil. They don't understand that helicopters aren't going to hurt the house. They don't understand the house. They think it's a cave. So since we've established that they don't understand a lot of very higher concepts, you can kind of equate that to somebody who may be fucking falling on their ass drunk. It's a crime to actually have sex with that person if you're sober, because, well, frankly, you're taking advantage of somebody who's not in a state where they can actually consent because they don't understand the concepts.
Yeah, like at that point, the bridge between what's feasible and non-feasible is so thin that at that point they are basically retards in their own right, because of the simple fact that, like, they've drunk themselves into a stupor. They don't know what the fuck is going on. You can make them do the most dumbest shit,
right?
And they would just laugh about it because they have no idea what they're doing.
I mean, they always present these really weird mental gymnastics arguments. So part of that is trying to look at what they're presenting and how to navigate it and how to make a real world parallel between two human beings. And that's usually the best way to shut down an argument, if I can be completely honest. Like, if you're going to illustrate anything, illustrate how it's still fucking illegal between two human beings, because that's how they're viewing their relationship in their warped little demented heads, that this is the same as two human beings. So you need to break it down to the same level of, okay, if two human beings did this would still be rape. So what you're doing is rape. It's like if two human beings did this, you're adopting a puppy so that you can marry it. Okay, so effectively you're grooming a child then. So you're a child groomer. It becomes
so stupid fucking arguments eventually, because it's like, if you're gonna have to lower yourself to their level of thinking and try to argue for it, it becomes so fucking stupid because it breaks in so many other areas, and you have to craft yourself a reality that is just so dumb.
Yeah, it's annoying that you have to break everything down to, like, even treat their argument like it's too human, like, because they will present it every time it's like they're saying just a fucking fact, like, oh, the sky's blue. Like, that's the same level of casual way that they'll talk about this. So when you're presenting a counter argument, there needs to be some kind of equivalent in humanity, like, okay, well, if two humans did this, so therefore what you're doing, because we can establish these two things are not dissimilar in your mind, what you're doing is still rape. You need to be able to do that with your counter arguments. That's the best advice I can give. Or you can just dismiss them entirely and laugh at them. That's what I mean.
Hey, of course. But there's also other things you can fucking argue about, which is, for example, zoonotic diseases. This is something that is also very true. Think of this fact. AIDS, for example, came from chimpanzees. Like, this was something that first came into humans through monkeys. So we got the bacteria from them. Not through intercourse, but through other means. I think it was like not fully cooked meat that eventually like turned into AIDS and it became a thing. But the thing is that you have diseases that spreads from animals to humans, and this is primarily through bacteria. You have a lot of zoonotic diseases. Apparently, there's like over 200 of them, which has been identified to be caused by bacteria, parasites, fungi, viruses, and there's a lot of them. For example, leptospirosis. Any contact with the sexual organs of dog, cattle, pig, horses, and sheep can transmit this bacterial disease to human. Leptospirosis can cause meningitis, which leads to death in about 10% of the cases. So here you have a very good medical reasons for why not to do it. Another thing, which could be a medical reason for not to do it, is because their fucking phallic members are completely fucking different. Their orifices are completely fucking different to that of yours. Like, you're trying to essentially you're plugging fucking electricity into the wrong outlet, basically.
I know. I don't disagree with anything that you've said. And honestly, I'm right there with you. It's just one of those things where it just leaves me, like you said earlier, baffled that I need to explain this to a human being. Like, you don't ever think that you would ever have to. And then you feel like you're the fucking crazy one because you literally have to start crafting counter arguments so that this person who you know is fucking banana sandwich will understand why they're banana sandwich.
And not only that, so and the argument that people would, like Zoophos probably would do would be like, oh, well, humans can give you STDs too. Yeah, but they can at the very least tell you what they have beforehand. A fucking dog can't do that. A fucking horse can't do that. Which means that you have to go into their bodies and do blood samples, testing, and things like that to make sure they're fine. Which means that, you know, you're just preparing them for the final act, which is to pleasure your fucking filthy ass.
Which we circled back to grooming
again. So at that, it's just, there's no real way to, like, avoid it. I will put links in the description to where I found these sources for these things, and you can definitely look at them yourselves. I felt weird enough having to look it up.
To all the viewers watching, in my opinion, there's two good ways to argue with a zoophile. One is to find a way to bring in a real world equivalent, like between two human beings, so that way you can shut them down at a very easy to understand level. On their end, it's easy to understand. You already understand this, I'm assuming. Or number two, make fun of them, point and laugh, throw popcorn, because like, this is stupid, and they're probably not going to listen.
These fuckers need to be laughed off the internet for very good reasons, very, very fucking good reasons.
Like, these people, I'm gonna let you know right now. These people, they think they're some huge free thinkers, like great activists. No, they're a bunch of fucking speds. Treat them like speds.
And there you go. Fucking, it's all solved. I will say this though. I am going to still hold the invitation out for Sappho. If she wants to come on, the fucking invitation is there. I know we've talked a lot of shit. A lot of it is banter, but I will say this: you are welcome on. If you want to talk, if this is something that has gotten your jimmies a little bit rustled, then you're more than welcome on. So,
yeah. By the way, since we're talking to Sappho again, Sappho, if you want to come back on, or if you want to come on Freeman's channel, I would love to see you do that. I would love to see you try and disprove anything I've said. You fucking sped.
Fucking hell. So the last thing then that we'll go on is, so what can be done? And this is something that you were about to say in the beginning, like what can be done against, because now we have gone with the arguments. Fair enough, words are going to get you a certain distance, but action is also is eventually going to be the killer if you have to get to that. So for the fandom, what can be done? What would you say at this point is the best course of action to get rid of this shit? As an organization, to maybe even act professionally about it, like, what would they have to do in your mind?
The problem is, I don't think it ever can be something that will be fully gotten rid of. And that is an unfortunate truth. And the reason why is because as many people are crawling out of the woodwork, there are still people, like, the reason why we have people being exposed at all, like the Tao Foxy thing, that whole ring being exposed in Denver, is because some of them do make the smart decision on their end not to tell people, and it gets outed anyway. So I guarantee you, somewhere in the fandom, there's always going to be people with these, proclivities. Even even if it's never going to be accepted by the fandom. Like, let's just say that that's never accepted by the fandom, even if there are people trying to advocate for it, it gets completely shut down. Like, people advocating get shut down. You'll always get the people who are still hiding.
Of course,
but
it's better that they're sort of like, it's one thing if they're hiding and they just never bother anyone, not even bother a dog about it, but it's completely, or an animal for that matter.
Make no mistake. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do anything. I think we should absolutely try to do whatever we can. I'm just trying to clarify and answer your question. I think just being as realistic about it as possible, it's never going to be fully gone because people who are hiding it are still going to be hiding it.
That's fair.
Yep. You know, it's one of those things where I think that there's probably a lot we can try to do, but I think it would take, as far as people who are outspokenly like trying to advocate for it, I think though, whatever that answer is, I think there's probably a lot of, I think that there are many components to whatever, and let me try to find a way to word this correctly. I think it is a large problem with a lot of components to it as far as finding a workable solution. I think that that is something that is kind of beyond my skill set alone, and ultimately at the end of the day, I don't know what that would be, but whatever it is, it would require pretty much everybody, as far as this topic is concerned, to be on the same page and willing to set aside all differences, and I mean all. So that means people who are really hardcore conservative furries, people who are really hardcore, liberal furries, people who are, on con staff, people who are, running groups that are banned from conventions for reasons unrelated to zoophilia or pedophilia. Everyone and their mother needs to be willing to set every difference aside for the purpose of making sure this gets shut down when it's found. Like, that's sort of activism. So that's it. Realistically, to me, that's the only true workable solution I can see. Everyone sets aside every difference when this comes out to oust it. One, make sure everyone knows what this person is up to. Two, and make sure that they cannot go to any conventions anymore, that they cannot hire any artists anymore, or any artists that are, against this stuff and outspokenly against it, I guess. You get what I'm saying. It's but all hands on deck is what the answer has to be, in my opinion. That's the only thing I can see. All hands on deck, everywhere. Everyone everywhere against it, outspokenly against it, and helping to spread the word that this is happening and we have to shut this down.
Yeah.
And you do see some of that now. There are many furries who are willing to set aside some of their differences when this stuff happens, and you even see it sometimes on Twitter. You see it sometimes on my YouTube comment section. Logovert, I don't know if you've heard of him, or Misha B. Barkin. They talk about some of this stuff too, and they see it in their comment section too, that there's people really rallying to try to solve these problems when they come out. And there's a lot of people who are very impressed by that sort of thing, like in the comment sections as well. Like, there's people who've even begun changing their opinion of the furry fandom because of how many furries are outspokenly against it in the comment sections of myself and two of my peers. But at the same time, it's not a big enough thing to call it a solution unless everyone's involved. Sorry, it was that was a long diatribe, I understand, but basically that's kind of the long and short of it is, I think it has to be the most workable solution is everyone sets sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry, it's okay. I wanted you to have the last word there, so it's all right. Yeah, it's one of those things where, what are we gonna do? What are people gonna do? I think that the best thing that people can do in this case is that people know typically what is the problem. People know what it is that should where the issues lie. The problem is though how it's going to be actually dealt with, and anyone can come up with ideas. I have mine. I haven't said them yet, and I don't think I should. Maybe, I don't know. I need to, in that case, properly get a whole video talking about that in its entirety. Maybe, I don't know. I have a video that's a bit older. It needs some rework. But yeah, I think in total that's what can be done.
I mean, I do want to point out right now.
In total, I think that's sorry, but just in total, I think that's what can be done. That Sorry, I do think that something should be done. Go ahead.
And I just wanted to point out, and when I'm saying this, I'm not saying... When I say this, what I'm saying... Sorry, I'm really trying. I don't like that I'm going to say this. And it's for personal reasons. When I say this, that everybody has to be willing to set aside every difference, I mean everybody, to the extent that people who have actively called me things that I'm not, like a Nazi, or that they've called me a bigot, things like that, people in the fandom who are not zoophiles and pedophiles who have called me these things, I would happily be willing to set aside every difference I have with them temporarily in order to solve these problems, if it meant that everybody was willing to do the exact same thing. And that's the kind of level of setting things aside that I think everybody needs to be willing to do. And I'm willing to do that as well, but the problem is I just don't see it as something that everyone would ever be willing to do. And that's the problem. Not everyone is willing to do that. And that needs to be an everyone thing. It's an all or nothing thing. Like, I can give you names of people that I absolutely fucking despise, but I would still, for the sake of keeping the solution alive, yeah, I would set aside the differences that I have with them for the time being to make sure that things worked out. So that's my position on that. It's not an ideal solution. In fact, it's probably not even one that would ever really even work, but it's the only thing I see that would solve the problem.
All right. So, in that case, I think we have it pretty nailed down. With that, I think it's time for us to maybe say goodbye. We've been running over a little bit over time, but that's fine. The topic in question was important to be talking about that. But yeah, I think this is where we'll cut it for today. Any final words, or do you want to have that as your final word?
Well, I just wanted to say I hope you in Freeman's audience have found me sufficient.
But yeah, if you guys want to hear more about this stuff, well, tell me in the comments, maybe share it around. And do remember to like and subscribe, as it does help me a lot. I will see you guys in an upcoming video. What that will be, we'll have to see. But until then, I'll see you around. So for those of you that just finished watching this, I am incredibly sorry for sounding so disinterested throughout the entire thing. It also sounded like I was interrupting a lot, but that was because of audio issues. You can even hear it in the background that his voice came a little bit afterwards than it was actually supposed to. So I don't really know what was going on with that. I've been having those weird problems before, but they seem to be very selective of when they actually appear and not appear. As for the reasons for my disinterest, well, that very morning I had actually gotten information that one in the family had passed away. We all knew that it would happen eventually, but that was the day it had happened on. And I was a little bit down because of that. Now, this interview had already been pushed up before a lot, and I felt bad about doing it again, so without beating around the bush, I decided that fuck it, let's do it and see what happens. The result, however, was this, so it wasn't amazing, sure, but I still think it serves as a good piece for what it is, with a few hiccups here and there that I do apologize for. Now, however, to the actual things at hand. Where the hell is Sappho? Well, she's gone. She's no longer online, and as far as I understand it, she is in a place where she is not going to be able to go online anymore. So over the course of a 2-month period, shit hit the fan really quickly, where Sappho was actually outed for having groomed a minor of 16 years old during December. She was also accused of having groomed another minor, which had committed suicide at a later date. During January, she privated her coming out about things and for the haters video, and then later on the very same month, she deleted her entire YouTube channel and is no longer active anywhere. Sappho's Instagram account still exists, though as far as I know, nothing has been posted there, and the thing is privated anyway, so I'm not really able to tell. Now, as to my comments about her current whereabouts, things are a little bit strange. She's not only gone from the internet, but she's also apparently been put into a long-term psychiatric care and is being treated for paranoia, delusions, severe anxiety, depression, and paraphilic disorder. There's even a list of medicine about which sort of medicine she's prescribed on currently, so I don't actually know how true this is, where the source is for all of this, but I will say this, if this is true, good. Not only being a zoophile, she's also a map supporter and a map herself, and also had an entire organization based on supporting Zoophiles, which in my opinion is really telling that something isn't right. The only positive thing I can think of saying to her in this moment is that I hope that she gets all the medical attention and meds she needs in order to get out of this weird mental situation, because I do not understand how a person can logically go to these sort of conclusions and make it seem as if though this is a valid thing for them to spend their time, effort, and money on. On a personal note, however, I'm just extremely glad that she's gone and no longer going to be online for the foreseeable future. She has caused a lot of harm, far more than anyone should ever tolerate to have to be around. And because of that, I'm just extremely happy that she's no longer going to be around us by the looks of things. Now, apparently she did state she was going to kill off the Hypnotist Sappho persona, which makes me a little bit worried that maybe she's gonna try to return in a similar way of Kiro, basically trying to rebrand and get it back in some sort of manner, which, I hope not. And absolute lastly, on a personal note that I'd like to give to any furry out there that might be watching and considers themselves a part of the fandom. I'm not your friend. I'm not the fandom's friend. But I'm also not any other fandom's friend. I have a problem when people in question within a fandom utilizes its name as a weapon and a banner to go against something that they don't like. When they're using the reputation of the fandom, when they're using its fame, when they're using the thing that it was built up on to try and fight something that has nothing to do with the fandom and that is generally just a really odd target. It doesn't make sense, and it's only bringing harm to the people that are doing it, and also the people within who has to suffer for it. Any sort of fandom that utilizes its messaging and platform for the purposes of extremist views, for degeneracy, for general harassment and bullying, or even idealistic gatekeeping in elitist fashions should immediately excise those elements that are causing this to happen and to spread positivity and awareness by talking about it openly and daring to spread the message about what's currently happening. If you aren't seen, you don't exist, period. If you're not seen to cause resistance, if you're not seen talking about these things that are causing such harm and disrepute, then you might as well not be there at all, because you're wasting your time and effort on even thinking about it. Leave. Let the Titanic sink rather than trying to save her mid-sinking. It's not worth your time. And that's all I have to say. If you have a problem, make it known you don't like it. Thank you everyone so much for watching. If it comes to the conclusion that you want to invite me to any sort of show, or if you want to talk to me further on something, I am definitely down doing so. Just send me a message on Discord or on Twitter. I am available there at pretty much all times. Oh, and I forgot, what about future videos? Yeah, keep a lookout for that. See you soon. And bring a cross or two. We're gonna need them.